All right, let's kick things off tonight with Israel's ambassador to Washington, Dr. Michael Leiter. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for being here. President Trump spoke to the prime minister both yesterday and then again this morning. He says he urged Netanyahu not to attack Iran last night, but Israel did attack, did respond. After a second phone call today, Netanyahu ordered the military to stand down. Why did Netanyahu listen to Trump this morning but not last night?
Well, Elizabeth, I think you may be framing the entire issue a little bit differently than as it actually occurred. Look, the president and the prime minister speak sometimes twice a day, but certainly every other day for the past year almost. They've met 7 times in Washington and once in Jerusalem. There's hundreds and hundreds of hours of conversation. And to pick out a select sentence from an Axios report is simply unfair. Look, Israel was.
Are you saying President Trump did not call the prime minister yesterday and tell him not to attack Iran?
I'm saying that Israel was hit with ballistic missiles, and the president understands that a country, a self-respecting country, cannot allow itself to be hit with ballistic missiles without responding. There's no country in the world that respects itself that would not respond to ballistic missiles, and President Trump, more than anyone, understands that. So we would love to avoid any kind of confrontation with our neighbors. But the fact of the matter is that we're being hit by Hezbollah and we're being hit by Iran. And when that happens, we're going to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that position, and Prime Minister Netanyahu made that forcefully. But to be clear, you didn't exactly answer my question. Are you saying that President Trump did not urge Prime Minister Netanyahu not to attack Iran?
I think the president has conversations with the prime minister that belong between them. I don't want to comment. I'm on those phone calls, and I can tell you that the hundreds of hours of conversations between the two leaders are cordial, friendly, and deeply respectful.
Well, not all of them. We have both the President, Trump, and the Israeli Prime Minister who both confirmed that a phone call last week was quite fiery and tense. A phone call in which President Trump confirmed that he said the Prime Minister was, quote, effing crazy.
Yeah, well, you know, even lovers have spats from time to time. So taking into account the literally hundreds of hours of conversation and picking out 2 words to make that the fulcrum of their relationship, I think is mistaken.
The New York Times writes today, quote, if Mr. Netanyahu had hopes of undermining the peace talks with Iran, the president's pressure and Israel's abandonment of preparations for another attack Monday showed that this failed. Does the prime minister want a peace deal with Iran?
You know, that is so insidious, but it's not atypical for the New York Times, which has become the #1 rag attacking Israel almost on a daily basis. The prime minister of Israel, the people of Israel want, of course, an agreement with Iran, which would lead to the complete de-weaponization of their ballistic missiles, of their nuclear weapons program, and an end to their support of the proxies that have been attacking us from all sides. If that can be achieved, we're certainly very supportive of that. But to talk about undermining the president of the United States, it's disgusting. It's completely fallacious, but it's keeping with the New York Times' basic agenda to demonize Israel at every turn.
We have not heard a lot. At the beginning of the war with Iran, we did hear from President Trump a lot about the fact that Iran must give up arming and aiding and abetting these terrorist proxies like Hezbollah, which has vowed to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, like the Houthis in Yemen. We have not heard that so much, Ambassador, in the last few weeks. We've heard a lot about opening the Strait of Hormuz and a lot about getting rid of the enriched uranium. Are you at all nervous that perhaps that particular condition has fallen down or fallen by the wayside?
We're very confident that President Trump will not sign an agreement that will not benefit the United States, that will not benefit Israel, that will not benefit our allies in the region. I think everybody is very focused on not allowing Iran to once again become a malign regional hegemon. And President Trump has repeated many, many times that he does not sign bad deals. And we're confident that that's the case.
Bottom line, Iran is trying to exert whatever influence it thinks it has to impose some sort of new world order in the Middle East, wherein Hezbollah is seen as part and parcel of Iran and gets protection somehow to be able to sit on the border with Israel, arm itself, and attack Israel.
Look, Israel is the little Satan to Iran. America and the West is the big Satan. This is something they believe in. We shouldn't be patronizing and assume that they really don't believe it. They're just saying it for public consumption. This is something that these madmen of Tehran believe. If they have the ability to do it, they will do it. They will destroy, and they will cause mayhem, murder, and destruction wherever they can. This is what they've done for 47 years. Imagine, Elizabeth, they're closing now. They're holding the world hostage in the Straits of Hormuz without nuclear weapons, without a massive ballistic missile program. Imagine they have that tomorrow. The entire world is going to be held hostage by these madmen, and it has to stop. And I'm quite sure that the leader of the free world, President Trump, will do everything in his power to make sure that doesn't happen. And we are his ally in this. We will stand by him side by side to make sure that Iran is no longer a malign, malicious influence in the region.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.